to our council members and our residents. Last year, I presented a State of the City report marked with a stark financial picture, but filled with hope for the year ahead in terms of what I know we could have accomplished. Looking back, no one could have predicted the year would be focused on reacting to an international pandemic, impacting every resident, business, and touching all pockets of our community. No one was prepared for the social and financial implications a phenomenon would bring. As a city, we were forced to do things we had not seen in decades, sending employees home, drastically reducing staffing, and shutting down operations for long stretches of time. But sometimes the toughest moments in this job are not the actions we take, but the feedback we receive from those we serve. Back in late March, I received a letter from one of our young residents, Madeline. Madeline wrote, "Dear Mayor Sundquist, on Monday I studied the coronavirus 19. I know how to avoid the coronavirus, but I'm afraid that my family members are going to die. Do you have any tips for me? Are you scared for some of your relatives? Madeline." I remember how that letter made me pause and sit quietly at my desk. COVID-19 brought about some of the scariest things we have seen and some of the deadliest effects. It forced us to take swift action early on, things like enacting a financial restructuring plan, cutting $1.2 million from our budget, reimagining how we deal with members of the public, and providing direct support to our own struggling community. And we even had to find ways to protect our own employees from the ravages of this disease. I wrote Madeline back a few days later and I told her the following. I know with all the things you may see, hear, and learn, everything may seem scary, especially the thought of losing the ones we love. Just like you, I think about my family every day and how hard it would be to lose one of them. But I want to tell you a secret. Every day I come to work at City Hall and I think about all the ways I can protect my family, your family, and everyone in the city of Jamestown from this disease. It's not easy telling people what they can and can't do, but when we want to make sure all of our relatives stay healthy, it's the best we can do right now. I hope you continue writing in your journal every day, but make sure you include your fears. Even mayors keep journals, and I can tell you for a fact, I include my fears in it. Once we know what our fears are, once we hear them out loud, they no longer become scary, and we start to look for ways to overcome them. Thank you again for your letter. Be strong, and remember, we will get through this together. I've thought about Madeline's letter every day since. It makes me realize why we as a city continue, why we as a city strive to keep our community healthy and thriving, and how we must put aside our fears and push forward for each and every resident. My State of the City report is about a city overcoming a pandemic to modernize, about focusing on protecting and serving our community through reimagined public safety and bridging divides, talking about tackling our financial challenges for our businesses and our own city. This report is how the city of Jamestown plans to rebuild, rebound, and adapt to a rapidly changing world. Before looking forward, we must look back on what we as a city accomplished this year. Given the pandemic, we have no shortage of action items that got done this year. We're moving towards a digital citywide information sharing platform that connects each of our departments together. We're investing in contactless solutions to better interact with the public. But I want you to take a moment and consider this. For the first time ever, we accepted tax bill payments online and posted our tax bills on the city's website. We've also increased transparency and accountability in city government. Since the first meeting in 2020, we have streamed every public meeting, hearing, and press event. We created community engagement with the establishment of a citywide social media presence, and we're working towards a complete website redesign. This process will soon allow us to provide emergency and informational alerts via email and text message for all residents. On top of that, and at the recommendation of our City Council, we provided language translation services for every department so that no matter what you speak, you can interact with your government without fear of a language barrier. At the start of the year, it was no secret that our city was left with a mess related to ambulance service, a dire situation that still exists. However, we took steps this year in working towards a solution by renegotiating a contract with the city's primary ambulance provider, All-Star, and creating a new agreement with Chautauqua County to provide advanced life support services for our ambulance transport. Both agreements now result in the city being able to bill insurance for transports, which will hopefully provide the much needed funding for critical additional staffing in our fire department. As a city, we provided just under $1 million in COVID-19 relief grants through the Jamestown Urban Renewal Agency. We were the first city in all of Western New York to create not only a business relief fund, but a rental relief fund to ensure that our residents had the ability to pay rent and keep a roof over their heads. In addition, we created a utility payment assistance fund in conjunction with the Board of Public Utilities to help residents get back on their feet and avoid future utility shutoffs. Amidst all of this, we saw national turmoil and racial tension spring up across our nation last year, and our citizens stood up and demanded action. Working hand in hand, we reestablished our Human Rights Commission to foster better relationships in the community, tackle racial inequality and human rights violations, while helping to ensure we have positive relations with our public safety officers. All of this as we ushered in a new administration with new department heads in almost every part of city government. We selected a new police chief during the middle of civil unrest. We selected a new deputy fire chief during the middle of a pandemic. And we installed a new clerk, comptroller, and city attorney. 2020 was a year of great change in this city. And I am proud of the work each and every department has done throughout the year. And I could not have asked for better leadership to keep our employees calm and safe during this pandemic. It is time for us as a community to look towards the future and continue our modernization efforts. Some of the top priorities going into this year include increased access to information and data for our citizens. Soon we'll have a public portal set up for residents to report concerns, see issues on properties, and better understand how the city makes decisions based on the calls we get and the data we have. In addition, we want our citizens to have access to our finances and get a grasp on how taxpayer money is being spent. We're working on developing a financial accountability portal with our comptroller's office so that every person can see the city's financial data for themselves. Lastly, we'll continue to work to modernize our fire operations. You know, when I first got into office, I toured each fire station in this city, only to find out that we had no computers or internet in any outside station. We were still handwriting all of our reports on carbon copied paper. We have been working to find and establish software to digitally report fire operations and provide electronic reporting to hospitals on our ambulance calls. It's no secret that this year has been a challenge for development of our public safety program. It was a year of change and progress. Our police chief of many years retired, and we underwent a community effort to pick the next chief of police. I am proud of the appointment of Chief Timothy Jackson and his community outreach initiatives in just a few short months. We started challenging our officers to get out of their cars and meet our community in a different light. You may have seen some of our officers sledding with our children down at the Allen Park Bandshell, a video that gained regional news and had over 2 million views. Or you may have met our newest officer, Hope, a therapy dog meant to comfort our victims of domestic violence. 2021 brings about new community connections and even greater diversity. In the first year alone, we have hired officers from all walks of life, including minority officers, female officers, Spanish-speaking officers, and even an officer that can connect with our hard-of-hearing community through American Sign Language. All officers that can better understand and connect with our community. Looking forward, I am excited for our team to increase our ability to serve the community. Our police department will now have a community engagement and victim services captain to develop and implement a citizens police academy and to connect with our residents in new ways. In addition, our police department continues to work closely with our mental health community partners to develop a program where no matter the call, we can connect a resident to much needed mental health services and support. Now, for many years, the city's focus has been on the development of the downtown core. Although we have seen great strides, we have done so at the perils of our neighborhoods. A city is only as good as its neighbors. With the passage of our new comprehensive action plan through housing and urban development, we have reinvented our housing and neighborhood development programs. Now, for the first time in decades, we have allocated funding to improve neighborhoods and provide direct funding to responsible homeowners to make necessary repairs to their homes. At the same time, we have to hold irresponsible and out-of-sight landlords accountable. We've been working directly with the University of Buffalo Law School clinical program to help us draft local legislation to force inspections of rental properties across the city. We're working towards a program that will allow landlords that regularly communicate with the city and keep their properties up to date pay less in fees and fines and penalize those that fail to even keep minimum living condition standards. Now, I've been to every ward and street in this city, and I have walked with neighbors as they talk about the living conditions in their neighborhoods. I cannot let our neighborhoods slip by. Starting this year, we'll be bringing together federal, state, local, and community partners to sweep up neighborhoods and fight blight. We will be working with our neighbors to clean up junk and debris, help repair homes and properties, push out crime, and work to ensure our residents get the mental help they need. But let me be clear. I'm looking at you, 8th and 9th Street, between Main and Washington. Your neighbors have had enough, and we are going to come together as a community and turn it around. But we aren't stopping there. Our legal team has started lawsuits on 19 properties across the city and in every home where homes sit empty and banks are letting properties rot. Under New York State's zombie property law, we will be aggressively going after out-of-state banks. Banks can be assessed civil penalties of up to $500 each day they leave a property unmanaged. And if we want to be a modern city, we need to start to look at modern tax structures as well. Under our current system, if you make additional improvements to your home value rises and your taxes increase. But if you let your home go by the wayside, your tax basis stays the same or reduces. With home values in Jamestown so low, there is no incentive for property owners to invest in their homes, creating a vicious cycle of decay. We've started looking into changes in New York State tax law that will allow us as a city to incentivize those that make improvements or build on vacant lots through lower taxes, and raise taxes for those who invest nothing in their home and their neighborhoods. If nothing else, this pandemic has shown some monstrous divides in our community. One that stands out is the lack of support for minority and disadvantaged businesses. Did you know that there is not one minority-owned business in Jamestown registered with the state of New York? My team is set out to change that mentality and start to support our disadvantaged businesses, whether they be minority-owned, woman-owned, or veteran-owned. We're starting to work closely with the Jamestown Local Development Corporation, the Small Business Association, and local business consultants to help recruit, develop, register, and support disadvantaged businesses. We've also started to process to change our business loans to provide greater lending potential for such businesses. But when we look at the other gaps that we face in this city, we see the widening gap for childcare options. Did you know that one of the top stumbling blocks for getting a job in this area is the lack of adequate childcare? We need to ensure that there are places and spaces for our children to go. I'm excited to be working closely with the state through its Regional Economic Development Council to focus on getting funds to provide access to quality childcare right here in the city of Jamestown. Hand in hand with the issues facing our children is a digital divide facing our community. During the pandemic, I spoke with countless folks that couldn't afford internet access for their children, or job seekers that couldn't access internet job applications because the library was closed and they had no personal internet connection. Even remote workers who constantly mention how spotty our connections have become in this area as they connect to their companies across the globe. Now more than ever, we must investigate and invest in municipal broadband for our community. A low-cost, high-speed option that could provide a free lifeline connection to those in need, and a lower-cost option to residents and businesses. I'm excited to announce the formation of a municipal broadband task force to look into seeing if the city can develop a municipal broadband program through the BPU. But the one topic that continues to permeate every conversation that I have about the future of Jamestown is how do we address our financial challenges? We are a city that cannot raise taxes and is handicapped by our legacy employment costs. Now more than ever, it is imperative that we work with the City Council to try to solve our financial issues and find ways of raising revenue and reducing expenses. We have so much work left to do, including working with our unions this year. With all our collective bargaining agreements up, we will begin the process of negotiating and working to secure reasonable and responsible contracts with each bargaining unit. I'm proud to announce the start of our Healthcare Advisory Committee. This committee will be made up of union members, retirees, council members, and staff to evaluate our healthcare costs and make recommendations on our healthcare partners and overhead costs. This past year has only made our financial situation more dire. We used to be one of the only municipalities across the state that was in a financial stranglehold. But given COVID, many municipalities across New York are now saddled with enormous deficits and even higher costs. While we work through issues locally, I will be working with state and federal government to secure additional funding to help the deficit that arose because of the pandemic and support to get us back on track. Local municipalities were on the front line of fighting COVID, and we must get our fair share to fully recover. If not, the consequences will be dire. My focus this upcoming year is to get Jamestown to rebuild, rebound, and adapt. I'm proud of my team of passionate and talented individuals that have accomplished so much this year. I'm pleased to see our city council working together to get things done, despite the massive challenges the pandemic has thrown in our way. But I am most humbled by the work our community has done to come together and fight COVID-19. Now is the time we must come together and focus on rebuilding our neighborhoods and small businesses. We must focus on healing the rifts that are dividing our community and the rifts that are dividing our country. We must listen empathetically to one another. We must do this for our businesses, for our churches, for people like Madeline, who are only concerned about the safety and health of their families. A brave new world is upon us, and we can either stay the course and remain stagnant, or we as a city can adapt and thrive.